Beginning the conversation, the Dr. Brandt Foundation Say I Love You speaker series is something that I think is absolutely needed. Conversations like this that will touch on, support, and cover conversations around mental wellness. I am Dr. Yeager, joined today by JD DuBois. I will let JD touch a little bit more on explaining exactly who he is. My role is kind of wide-ranging. One of my main roles is I'm the life coach, the psychotherapist with the Detroit Pistons. JD, you want to touch a little bit about the wide-ranging things that you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, JD DuBois, assistant coach with the Detroit Pistons. Holistic coach is the style that I've termed in terms of how I like to approach the team. And like you said, outside of sports, just founder of an organization, a nonprofit, everyone has a story, and really everything that I do on and off the floor is just looking to holistically not only develop players, but support players and support the organization and look to just push the organization forward as we continue to look to restore here at the Pistons.
Yeah, restore. So just the other night, you and I were talking, as we oftentimes do, and you brought up something that I think is really important, and I think I'll frame it as being important because I see that metaphors, I talk in metaphors a lot as a therapist. I use a lot of metaphors. And you brought something up when we were talking about how it is that we can normalize the conversation around mental wellness. And the metaphor that you used was that these conversations become a permission slip for people to talk about mental wellness, which is something I think is very simple. That's plain language. But being able to, so talk about that a little bit. Maybe we can go back and forth with it. I think that if we can begin to give people in our world, in our spaces, permission to talk about this, that they will.
So not only doing that in the community space, but also making sure in this smaller community with the Pistons and with our players and staff and individuals like yourself, that we also allow for our players to feel like they have permission to bring up, hey, JD, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z. Any thoughts, any ideas? Hey, Doc, I may be struggling on the floor or off, but they know they have permission. Not necessarily that we have the authority, but they know that the space is safe for them.
Yeah, and I don't think in our day-to-day lives, I think about it, JD, how many spots do you have that you can go be real about things that are troubling you or that you're struggling with? Like for me, I have a few people that I may be able to turn to. You'll meet one of them later in this conversation, but there are very few people or spaces or places that I can turn to and be real. Now, especially too in the context of being a black man, right? We have been told and sold a bill of goods that says, hey, you gotta be macho. You can't be, it's softer, all that mental stuff, man. We don't talk about our stuff, which is absolutely 180 degrees opposite of the truth. We got stuff, we got struggles, just like anyone else. But to be a black male and then put the layer of being a coach in the NBA or a player in the NBA, we avoid the vulnerability of moving in a way that we can discuss that. Do you sense that or feel that in your life?
Absolutely.
As a former player too?
I even go back to a couple seasons ago having Derrick Rose on the roster.
Yeah.
And him setting the standard of the authenticity
Yeah.
of that safe space. So knowing that there's conversations that I would have with him, he would have with me, that neither one of us are ever taken from that space and sharing elsewhere. And the vulnerability, both directions, allowed me now to, working with Cade, who I primarily work with, to say, you know, I understand the value of creating a safe space where he can be authentic. He might feel a way that may not be looked at as the best for the group, but he feels like he needs to get this out. And creating that safe space for him that he knows there's things that he'll share that will never leave me. There's things that I'll share about my personal experience that will never leave his ears. And I create that space so intentionally because if I go back to myself as a player, 14, 15, I started to see death at a young age. So having young friends being murdered was really yearly. We would not say joke, but we knew if I look at 6th grade to college, each year there was somebody I knew or was close to who was murdered. So this is at 13, 14, 15, and I just could imagine in college if I had an environment where either on the staff, at the university, it was normalized that I could go to player A or B. It wasn't until maybe sophomore, junior year that I did have one coach that I felt I could go to, but the space wasn't safe. The space with him was safe. So I take those experiences as a young athlete and I say, okay, 30-plus-year-old coach, how can I support Derrick Rose? How can I support 𝐒𝐂𝐋𝐋, 𝐒𝐕 DeLon, like any of these players that are on our roster over the course of years here in Detroit? But I knew that I needed that as a player. And not saying that my career would have been any better or I would have gone any further, but I know my enjoyment, my relationship with the game during those tough moments when I didn't have a safe space would have definitely been a lot different had I had a holistic coach or a holistic environment.
I want to get more into this concept of holistic coaching. I'm around, I'm listening, I watch, look at your office, I'm around when players stop by. I listen to the conversations. Oftentimes I jump in the middle of them. If I would have had your office to come to knock on the door and say, hey, coach, how you doing? Many times you probably can even hear how you doing as a signal this kid needs something. So it pushes you to provide a listening ear. I just finished my first book. The name of the book is How Am I Doing?
It's a hell of a question to ask.
Yeah, well, yeah, and it's not a question that we ever ask ourselves. How am I doing? Pretty good at saying, JD, how you doing?
Good.
But how often do we take the opportunity or find the ability to look in the mirror of our lives? Looking in that mirror to figure out who it is that I am and what level of support I may be seeking or needing, we don't really find the time to do that work. So providing that version and level of support for players can only produce more positive outcomes for them on the court. And I'm not trying to equate that to how many more wins, but a better man can only be a better player, right? So let me move it into a space that I think really is the cornerstone of what we're here to talk about. We're here to normalize, but the way in which we do that and the way in which you do it, I think is extremely important.
Coaching the player, but the person first. So how do I support both the person and the player? And it's kind of 4 pillars, being collaborative, right? So at our level, you got agent, you got family, you got front office, you got head coach, strength coach, being collaborative with all of the pieces that are touching this individual, right? Being flexible. Each day they walk in, I may have a plan in place, but they may be feeling a certain way that day. I got to be flexible and mold my approach based on the day. There may be goals that we have from the development plan that over the course of 5 to 10 games, guys may improve, so we have to be flexible in changing that, all right? Being intentional. So I need to be intentional with the film I show, be intentional with the language that I use, so not always using negative language. Hey, you aren't doing this, this, and this, or hey, we can improve on X, Y, and Z. Same teaching point, but the language is different. And then the last one is mindful, right? So teaching how, as an athlete, can I be mindful? How, as a human, can I be mindful? Am I aware of the internal dialogue on my way to the arena? Am I aware of the internal dialogue when the other team goes on a run? Am I aware of the internal dialogue when I'm making or missing shots? And then for myself, just being mindful that this is a human being. So if I'm not mindful and intentional that this is a human, I may miss certain cues that could trigger me to say, okay, I need to listen more today. I got 50 clips I want to show. There's a lot of things that we spoke about in the coaches meeting that I want to touch on because I know it's important for tomorrow's game. But I recognize that the body language is different than it's been for the last month. And where I got all of this from goes back to my father. growing up with, my dad was my coach, assistant, pretty much my whole life. He was a person who was always talking about the collective group treating each other the right way, right? He was always interested in, are the players good? Not necessarily how many shots, how many turnovers. He was always somebody who was looking to be supportive of the person and not only the player. And then, like you mentioned earlier, this is the type of environment that I feel like I could have thrived under, and all of my friends that have grown up and been NBA stars or all-stars, when we talk in the summer, not only them, but the extended players in our league, that type of environment is one that I know they're all hunting for, and a lot of them, when they've had their best years, were in spaces that were at least aligned. Even an example, my high school coach, we would wear shirts that said, "I believe in myself." And in high school, I was like, not that I questioned it, but it was kind of like, dang, we're kind of the only team. But when I look back, that's probably the most confident Ty Lofton out of LA. I believe in myself. Every shirt that was LA Stars on the back was actually the back. I believe in myself. So something as simple as that language that was put on everything we wore as a team, he would have us meditating, he would have us visualizing before games, like all of those things. And if I look at my performance in my career, it was always trending upwards, playing under him, because that was the environment. And the byproduct of that was he can coach us harder than probably any coach we've ever had.
Because you had a relationship, right?
And to that point, sometimes we go into it and say, okay, this player may not shoot it the best. This player may not make the best decisions, may not rebound, whatever the technical or tactical area we're trying to improve. But we never ask, what you struggling with the most? What you struggling with the most? Because there's certain players where certain numbers that we can find and say, oh, he needs to work on this. Certain film may show, oh, the feet may look. But when I ask him, what you struggling with the most? And he tells me, I'm struggling with managing people and managing my time. Yeah. I'm struggling with my energy and just being able to get a feel for those that are around me. Well, hold on now. If I could help him with these two areas, maybe have a little more energy to focus on the discipline of getting into a shot, the consistency that he needs to work. But if I go straight to, hey, numbers are this, film says this, come on, we gotta. And the whole time he's thinking like, man, this dude don't even know. Does
he care?
Fifth on my list in terms of importance of what I'm struggling with in my life. That's where I hope to see the game. And there are sprinkles of it in it, but just continue to develop in terms of figuring out what's the player struggling with the most. But you're not gonna get that from a lot of guys unless you have an authentic relationship with them.
So this piece of building, bonding those relationships in a meaningful and genuine way sounds to be, you kind of talked about some of those pillars, but all of that seems like a cornerstone to where the game is kind of evolving. Because I think something that we should do better with is the use of shared language. How do we share language? So if a coach is saying something to a player over and over and they're using a certain set of terms, and if I can begin to learn those terms, then when I'm working with that same player, I can utilize some of those terms with them, and maybe in a different way, but it's that language that's shared. You got thoughts on that?
No,
you see it as important?
Absolutely, and even if because I see that now pregame, now that we're in season, but if I go back Summer League and go back even a little before that, me doing a COVID year at the NBA, when I knew I was coaching Summer League, I said, all right, the first thing that I would like is to make sure that you're involved in our practices, not just because I needed the support, but also I knew, okay, we got the number one pick. We got a lot of players that this is their first time playing in front of a crowd in a long time. It's probably their first time having this much heightened pressure because we have the number one pick. It's easy to discern that the anxiety to perform and the worry of like, everybody's watching, it's my first opportunity, his fans are back. How can we provide them with support and be proactive instead of we get to game 3 and now we're saying, dang, these dudes, the moment is too big or they're too nervous. And And what I saw from having you, not only speaking before practice with the group, getting guys together after, was the end game. So watching you coach the coaches, one of the things that we talked about before was having someone who wasn't specifically looking at defensive rotations, who's moving the ball, offensive execution, but how clear was I in the timeout?
Yeah.
When a player walked off the floor, was my body language positive or negative based off of their performance? During the timeout, how good are the assistants at being connected, communicating clearly? What's the body language like of the bench? Like being able to watch all of the things that aren't on the stat sheet, but if you watch any good team, you know that the relationships of the group, both between staff and players, is deeply connected to scoreboard, win-loss. And I thought over the course of Summer League, we started slow. We continued to develop and improve because we had the foundation of connection, which I see carry over because that connection is not just your work, but you're trying to learn the language that we're talking, and you're able to communicate that not only during the games in Summer League, but as we've progressed into the regular season as well.
And I said, hey, as the head coach of the Summer League, Doc, I'm gonna assign you a role. I want you to coach the coaches. And here's what I want to see from that, coaching the coaches. I think that became almost, or it helped me develop a better sense of how to do this work as this season is begun to unfold. So as I watch the bench, I've always watched the bench, but I now watch the bench differently. I think that has impacted what I'm up to in terms of my work with the Pistons. I think it'll continue to be a cornerstone to how I do this work moving forward.
It's rare that you have anybody watching the coaches, from our body language, our clarity when we speak, and it forces us to continue to develop and improve as well, just like we're asking the players to. And I thought myself and our staff, each game we got better too.
Yes.
I thought our play increased because, the players improved, but how we engaged, how we spoke, our engagement, like we kept getting better as well. And I thought you started to see that in the results of the on-court performance.
But I see, and the folks will meet Dr. Jackson later on in this conversation, but I see the work of a therapeutic support in the NBA as family therapy. So the team is a family. The coaching staff are like parents and uncles, and the players are like not kids, but playing a similar role, nephews.
No, and just continuing to get feedback from the players. Like, it shouldn't just be, hey, players, I think you should do this. We know the research supports it. Nah, each day we should be touching base with them. Hey, how was the meditation after practice, Cade or Isaiah or Sadiq, Saban? Like, what'd you think about it? But that constant feedback, and I thought it was really good to just get the feedback from the different players that we had, and even the players that we have now on our roster. A few of them, their production is slowly starting to increase, and for me, just watching Cade's game continue to take steps as his mindset and his capacity mentally is starting to just clear, and he's able to just dive in and dial into being in the moment, playing present, taking a deep breath.
Anything you want to add? I know we have more folks to come in and continue the conversation with. Anything you want to add before?
Not really, just really by just using that holistic coaching framework that I hope to continue not only to develop, but to see in different spaces in our sport, because the younger these players are going to get coming into our league, they need so many different areas of support. And if we can holistically develop them as individuals, then our teams are developing holistically. And any organization where the person is being developed at the same rate as the player,
you're winning.
I think that's a recipe for success. Obviously, if the talent is also there as well.
But we would call that's almost like wraparound services. You want to wrap all the services and resources that you have around the players, around the team, for the benefit of the whole, right? I think that's really important.
And
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, no. Last thing is I think there's an area in our game, having somebody in your position who looks like our players, sounds like our players, and blends in with our players is such an important piece to it. Not that it has to always be that way,
Right.
but I've seen that there's a huge advantage when you speak the language that they speak, whether they're here at work, at home, in their hometowns, at the barbershop, or at their homes with their families. You can sit in any one of those spaces and they will feel comfortable around you.
Yeah.
Whether it's a clinical hour therapy session or it's post-practice, having someone in your position who can be comfortable with the individual in any pocket is just as important as where did you get your PhD from.
That engagement, that relatability, I think to me is the most important aspect of the work. I think it really is. How you doing, boss man?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good, man.
That day you smooth,
Good to see
man?
you. Good to see you.
Good.
So, for the conversation, this is Isaiah Livers, Kalamazoo native.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
University of Michigan,
Yep.
right? Michigan man.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
You know.
Also, Detroit Pistons draft pick. So let me just start off by asking you this. How's it feel to have been drafted by the team that I would assume you looked up to growing up in Michigan? How's that feel?
Well, being an in-state kid, growing up here, I went to high school, actually middle school, elementary, all that, all in the same state. Went to college in the same state, and then you hear a name called by like the same, like the hometown, like NBA team that you grew up, like you said, grew up watching. Like I watched a lot of guys like Tayshaun, Ben come through here, and what they did was phenomenal. And what I always had a dream was kind of like bringing the Pistons back. Like,
And the one thing that I'm happy that you're joining us today for is that we've had a lot of these conversations about visualization and the work that you do. So talk a little bit, and JD chiming in as we go. As you sit here today, how'd you come to that?
yeah, it was introduced to me my freshman year of college by Coach Beeline. He's really into the meditation. He believed it worked. You know me, come from high school, Kalamazoo. I never heard of meditation for real. I thought it was all a fluke. Tried it out. When I first tried it in college, you know, you're not going to be good at something you're trying for the first time. So I wasn't good at meditating, and I didn't know why, because I didn't have the patience. I was 18-year-old, you know, freshman year. Everything was new for me, so my mind was scattered. So I gave it up for probably about 2 years. At the end of my junior year, I really got back into it. I had a groin injury that prevented me from playing like 14 to 15 games my junior year. So that was a very dark time. It was hard for me just to go watch the guys play and just practice, because you know you want to be out there so bad. Like you guys all have a goal and you feel like you're letting them down. So that was hard for me. And then senior year, I have my stress fractures in my foot, trapped in a hotel in Indiana, March Madness, and you know things couldn't get worse, honestly. So I was sitting there just like dark room, and I just thought about meditation. Like out of nowhere, I don't know what reached me, but I just looked it up, did my research, downloaded the Calm app, paid my subscription, and I'm all the way into it now. And it really helped me after this injury for sure, because going to a draft process, as you imagine, couldn't be easier. Not being healthy, wasn't able to go out there and show people what I had, so I had to take care of my mind. And I think meditation was kind of like what saved me, and it kind of has me here right now, because I don't know where I'd be. I don't know what my skill set would be. I don't know with my mind, like I don't know how it would work. So I'm just happy to be here and be continuing to do meditation. I still do today. Like we talked about a long time ago, I have an alarm set. So there ain't no way I'm forgetting. I do it every day at the same time ever since I've been hurt.
One thing that I felt I learned even from you coaching Summer League is just watching your consistent discipline. So a lot of people talk about meditation is difficult, yoga is it's really about discipline. If I'm trying to change my physical body and they say, hey, you have to cut out sodas, you have to cut out chips late at night, you have to cut out fried foods. The first time I eat the lettuce wrap instead of with the brioche bun, it's gonna be a little different. But if I can remain disciplined, which I felt you really exemplified, and you weren't even playing. So to be able to mentally say, all right, I'm going to be consistent and I'm going to be disciplined mentally with my work, I think puts you ahead of the curve in terms of developing as a young player, because once your body gets back to full form and your mind has already been working, then it's very easy for the productivity on the floor to show itself because of that discipline mentally. And I don't think a lot of players have that, but a lot of players don't have your experience. Sometimes we look back and we say, dang, so if I didn't get hurt time one, time two, would I have said I needed meditation, I needed mindfulness? Well, you can almost be thankful for what in the moment felt like, man, this is the worst thing that could happen to me. Yeah. But in retrospect, it's actually the best thing that could happen to you, because now you have a skill set mentally that for the next 15 years that you're a pro, that's gonna allow you to continue to develop and to continue to improve. So now it's taking that experience and saying, all right, rookie, when you're in your 5th year, don't wait until you get injured. Don't wait until something happens to begin this discipline consistently. I think that's important.
I think when it was important, my dad, when I first got hurt, he called it a blessing in disguise.
What was your experience summer league-wise with having a structure where either before or after practice there was a space for you to either visualize and reflect on the day, or reflect on, okay, we know we're gonna have games on ESPN, we know the dynamic of summer league, the pressures. As a player, what was it like coming into your first experience as a pro and having an environment that was aligned with what you had already been doing coming back from injury? Was there anything that resonated with you to feel more comfortable, things that you said, okay, I know I'm gonna be able to not only recover at the speed or quicker than I would like, but really thrive even more so because of the structure of the environment?
Yeah. What we had after those summer league practices and even before the practices were kind of big time, like, especially me. Like, so being a rookie, like you said, coming in, and I'm watching all these players, watching my fellow teammates get up and down, have fun, and play the game that we all love. And then after practice, it's, you can't be on the court, you're hurt. Like, you know how I am. Like, I want to get my shots up, my extra reps, and that's a problem. So I had to learn that in order for me to calm down from that, we had that space. And I hope that can spread to other NBA teams, that other people hear this message, see this video, and I don't know, I want players to, well, not even players, as humans, to accept mental health. Like,
so that's
it's
that
important.
Process of, because we've been talking a lot about this conversation as a cornerstone opportunity to normalize the conversation around mental wellness. How do we make it normal? But how did you incorporate patience into your ritual, your day-to-day process of being able to say, I want to do what everybody else is doing. I know I may feel this injury, but I still think I want to do it. But patience was a virtue that you had to develop.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, it helps when you're incapable to be on the floor to begin with. So once that happened, so I was physically incapable of being out there, but my mind was free. I could do whatever I wanted with my mind. And honestly, I don't think, this never came up when we talked about it, but a lot of times in the car, like, especially like, because I drive like 30 minutes, 20 minutes to get to the gym, I have time, and I would play these meditation sounds. I remember once I found out he had it too, I was like, oh, so I'm not the only one. I'm not the only guy who does this. So
normalize it, baby.
Yeah, it's morning. I'm on my way to my job. You know, rookie year. I'm hurt. I would just play meditation sounds just to calm my mind down, just from thinking about everything. Like, because my mind's racing on my way to the gym. Like, what do I got to do? What do I got to get done? What kind of day is it? Is it my rehab day? Is it my workout day? I think that's the discipline that he was describing. Like that, being who I am today, I had a grandfather who recently passed. He taught me fishing. And you know all about fishing is patience is the virtue. Like, that's the only way you're gonna catch a fish. You're not gonna put the hook down there and come up and catch a fish. So you had to sit there for maybe 15, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 20 minutes. It depends on where you're fishing at. But I've been exposed to being patient my whole life. It was just a matter of accepting it.
If you could go back to the 16-year-old version of Isaiah, if there's something that you can take from all of these years since you were 16, around the concept of mental wellness and tell that 16-year-old version of yourself what you know now at 23, you get to take 2 minutes, and it's about mental wellness. What would you say?
Man, what I would tell my 16-year-old self is that you need to learn how to, let's say, organize your emotions and your feelings. Especially as a 16-year-old, even 18, 17, 18, just being in high school in general, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I mean, you got class, you got social status, you got sports. I would just tell him, don't even worry about all this right now. I think it's best to just work on yourself, because there's gonna be an obstacle coming up. I can't sit here and tell you because I'm not a fortune teller, and there's gonna come a time where you're gonna rely heavily on your mental. Now, if your mental is not prepped or ready for this situation, then it's gonna be harder to get out of that, hole. You never know what's coming ahead, so just always stay ready.
When I grow up, I want to be like you.
Appreciate that.
JD, anything?
No, I'm good.
Hey, so we appreciate you, baby boy. Excuse my seat. Appreciate you joining us. Having this conversation is
One day at a
important.
time,
Always
man.
good, for sure. You already know.
Thanks, dog. Dr. Jackson, how are you? Come on in, have a seat.
Best name in the game.
Hey, Dr. J. So this is Dr. Lawrence Jackson. Hey, we appreciate you spending some time coming in to talk with us in conversation about mental wellness. I will let you describe more deeply your credentials.
A licensed couple and family therapist by trade, but what that really speaks to is my specialization in working with relationships, right? Whether it be with couples, families, organizations, teams. We all influence one another, right? And that really led me to do the space and to do the work that I'm doing now, and doing the work here is even that much more amazing because, again, it's that relatability.
So one thing that I'm interested in talking about a little bit, because there's a level of pride that I have in seeing you wear that Cruise basketball sweatshirt today, that you, being connected through some of this work that I've done, you are now the first in the NBA, the first in the G League to do the work of psychological support with an organization, the Motor City Cruise. So talk a little bit about that, the importance of that, what that feels and what the sensibilities around that are, what you're excited about, what you're nervous about as this unfolds, because literally you're just beginning this now. So talk a little bit about that.
Speechless, right? It's an amazing opportunity to mix two things that I love, basketball, sports, and also mental health and wellness, right? And have them being able to coincide together and being able to be instrumental in that part. Mental health is for all of us, right? I always tell people, you know, therapy is kind of like tutoring. Sometimes.
And just from my observation, the innovation is not just in his position or not just in you being the first. It's the congruency that you guys are able to easily show of psychoeducation, sports performance. Because the positions have been available for athletes.
And that's connected to this piece of, I see the work that Doc is about to endeavor upon as pioneering work, in that the G League offers a new set of obstacles for players. And so the support for those players is gonna be different. It's gonna look different. So a player that has been in the G League for a number of years, hoping to make it into the big leagues, a player that is coming for a short period of time just to rehab an injury, right? We get players that they get hurt, they do a few game stint in the G League. So how do you work with them around injury pieces? I think that this work in the G League, this pioneering space, is gonna be really important as time develops and unfolds. I think it's gonna be really, really cool.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
I think it's imperative. I think it's super important for them to have that support because of these different experiences, these different journeys that they're partaking in, right? And to have somebody that can help guide you, right?
Yeah, that's what therapy is, right? That to be a change agent is not to try to change someone, but is to facilitate the process with you. Hey, let me help facilitate this with you. You have now told some stories. I've listened to them. I have some ideas and thoughts about how it may be helpful, but ultimately you do whatever you choose with it. You can say, I don't like that. So, any questions that you have, anything that you want to touch on, Doc, as we start to wrap up, anything that you could think of, or JD that you have?
I think the biggest thing is just something I think I live by, but I think it really speaks to the stuff that we've been talking about, right? And it's awareness brings the opportunity for change, right? You can't change something you're not aware of, right? But awareness doesn't bring about change.
Well, appreciate you sharing some time. Hey, kill it in this G League.
Thank you.
This
Yes,
first
sir.
initial year, kill the game. I'm excited to see how this unfolds.
Appreciate it, Doc. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Appreciate you.